Carrie, host of the Practically Speaking podcast, where I demystify and simplify public speaking so you can say what you need and want to say. And today I'm excited here on episode number 4 because I am answering questions from fans and folks that know my work, and they have real questions around public speaking. And I love this because I want to provide you with content that is meaningful to you. So I don't want to just hop on here and blather about what I think about public speaking or what I think is important about public speaking. I really want to make sure that I am giving you the information that is relevant and applicable to you. So today I'm answering a question from my good friend Jared Olson, and Jared is the head of customer success and a product evangelist. Blah, I said that wrong. Let's try it again, Jared. So he's the head of customer service success and a product evangelist for Motivosity. And Jared and I met through an event called Disrupt HR, which is Disrupt Human Resources. So Jared's in human resources, and he is a firecracker. Disrupt HR is an event that we hold here in Indianapolis. They're actually held throughout the country as a way to bring ideas to the table that are disruptive to the world of human resources. And they're super fun events. So think TEDx or TED with the added pressure of you only get 5 minutes, you get 20 auto-advancing slides. You don't even get to control your own slides. And you have got to bring an idea to the table that is disruptive to what is currently being talked about or shared or done in the world of human resources. And so Jared and the folks at Motivosity came to Indianapolis and shared their thoughts with us and sponsors of the event. It was just so cool. And Jared is a great speaker. I can attest because I was there. I watched him. I serve on the board of Disrupt HR and am the speaker liaison. So for what that's worth. And anyway, so he's just great. And so when I reached out to my LinkedIn community and I asked the question, what do you guys want to hear about? What questions do you have when it comes to public speaking? Jared hopped right in, which doesn't surprise me one bit because he's so active and fun. If you haven't connected with him on LinkedIn, I highly suggest that you do. He's always got something great to say, really positive mindset, and just is one of those phenomenal connectors in the professional world. So I will definitely leave his information in the show notes so you can connect with him. But anyway, he reached out to me and he asked a really great question, which is how much research must you do before you can talk about an idea in a public setting? Which is such a great question. And he really put some context around this question for me, and I want to share that with you. So I'm going to read what he wrote. So he said, here's what happens. I'll have a new idea pop into my head, and I want to start speaking to others about this newfound idea. My challenge is knowing how much research I need to do before I take the quote-unquote stage to start discussing the new idea. I usually jump straight into exploring the idea out loud in a public setting, and then people will inevitably ask, who do you know that has tried this and what was the outcome? He says, I'll follow that up with, honestly, it's a new idea I thought of, and I hope you and others will find a way to apply this into your daily work. He says some people receive that well, while others do not, as you might imagine. Thus, his question, how much research must you do before you can talk about an idea in a public setting? And I think it's such a great question. And it's one of those really, it's easy to answer and harder, right? Like let me find a better way to say that. It is a simple but not always easy answer, because here's what happens. If you're a confident speaker and maybe a more outgoing type of speaker, like I know that Jared is, it's really easy to find yourself in the gray area of speaking as though things are facts when they are not facts that you have actually confirmed. So I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but where you start professing an idea when it's really an idea, and you haven't given them, the other people listening to you, the context of, this is just an idea I came up with. It's a suggestion. It's a thought that's rolling around in my head. And all of a sudden, people are asking you questions about what you know in your head is an idea, but you've been talking about it with such confidence and with such probably clarity that people start to go, oh, well, okay, well, tell me more about this. I want to know the data behind it. And it's an easy trap to fall into. So to me, it's not a question of how much research you have to do. It's how much are you preparing the people that are listening to you? How much context are you giving them around what you're talking about? So if you're sharing an idea, then it's really important for folks to know that this is your idea. If you are sharing an opinion, it's really important to preface that opinion with, this is my opinion. If you are sharing research and fact, it's really important that you cite that research and you cite those facts. So this goes all the way back to basic schooling, that we know if we're quoting research, then we need to cite the sources, we need to give the information to the best of our ability. Now, let's pause here for a moment, because to the best of our ability can often be very, very tricky. So I want to make sure that we understand that the person doing the speaking in any public speaking situation is not the be-all, end-all knower of all things. So I want to take that pressure off of you as a speaker, and I want to take that pressure off the audience. Because if we really get this public speaking thing right, I've said this before and I'm going to say it again, is that we should be having a conversation with the audience. We should not be doing a performance. And it shouldn't be something that where we walk off with either we walk onto the stage with this idea that we have all the answers, because that will block a good conversation. And the audience shouldn't be looking at us as though we are the be-all, end-all guru of all things. I mean, I pick on him all the time, but I'm going to pick on Tony Robbins here. It's like, oh, we look at him as such a guru. And that really leaves us in the space of not questioning or thinking for ourselves. So back to Jared's question of how do you know you've done enough research? Well, if you're stating a fact, you need to really make sure that you've researched the fact, that you have the documentation, that if you're researching a study, that you can bring that study up for people. And then it's perfectly okay to not have research and to be talking about an idea, as long as everybody's on the same page, that they know that what you're talking about is an idea. This is an idea, and I love this. I love it. I love talking about ideas, because that leaves room for a conversation that says, let's talk about how you might do this. Let's talk about how we might employ this. Is this something that is applicable or relevant or interesting to you as an audience? So that's my really simple answer to that. I'm going to circle back here for a moment, because I do want to touch on this research piece that, especially in today's world, it is tricky with research, and it is tricky to verify sources sometimes. And there are times as a speaker where you might be professing information as fact. You might even have quote unquote research to back it up, and it might be wrong. So I like to leave space for what I call emerging speakers who are given information or who find information, and they are in every way, shape, or form using that information to the best of their ability. And it's still wrong. Let me give you an example, a very personal example of how this happened to me, because it can happen really, really quickly, because we put our trust in other people, and the old saying, trust but verify. Well, sometimes we don't do that. And sometimes that puts us in a position of being on a stage and sharing research that isn't accurate. And so I want to give you this example from my personal experience. When I first started in public speaking, I worked for a firm, and the leaders of that firm were very adamant that part of the model that they taught in the realm of public speaking was something called the 93-7 rule. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the 93-7 rule, but it basically goes like this. It's super famous in public speaking, and it's famously misused. But the rule states that communication is only 7% verbal and 93% nonverbal. Okay, so oftentimes this says, this gets translated to, it doesn't matter what you say, it only matters how you make them feel. And boy, oh boy, does this get people into trouble, because it's actually not true. That statistic is misused. So it comes from a researcher, Professor Albert Mehrabian. Sorry, Albert, I said your name wrong. But it's one of those rules. And if you go to his website, here's what I'll tell you. He says, please note that this and other equations regarding relative importance of verbal and nonverbal messages were derived from experiments dealing with communications of feelings and attitudes, for example, like and dislike. Unless a communicator is talking about their feelings or attitudes, these equations are not applicable. So the guy that did the research, the guy that has the 93-7 rule actually says that unless you're talking about attitudes of like and dislike, this rule doesn't apply. So I want you to think about this for a minute. There are so many instances where we are talking about things that are unrelated to our feelings. So you better believe that your words and your content matter. That, yes, while nonverbal information is important, it is not the be-all, end-all. So anyway, I went around and give you all of this backstory on the 93-7 rule. Is I was new in my job. I had listened to the leaders of my organization. I did not go back and check, and so this is on me as a speaker, but I didn't go back initially and check or verify the data that they had given me to present to other people. So I run around teaching this rule, which may or may not have helped people. I don't know. You'd have to go back and ask my clients during that time. But I'd like to think I probably did more damage than I did good by teaching this. And so I illustrate this story to say that we are going to mess this up. That there will be times where we ourselves may not fact check everything. That we will lean on our leaders or people around us to have done the work for us. And sometimes that's going to get us in hot water. It got me in hot water, or at least it got me to the place where I was like, wait a second, this isn't working. Is this rule even for real? And now I've got to go back and look at it. And now that I've gone back and looked at the data, I'm like, the data was wrong. Or not, the data wasn't wrong, but in the context in which I was using the data was not correct. So that space that says you are doing your best, you're doing the best you have with what you have at the moment. And then when you know better, you do better. So I don't ever encourage people to get to the point where they are so worried about perfection that they don't get something out. I think there's a space. I don't think. My opinion is wait a second. I'm saying that. There's a space that says we are doing the best we can with the information we have. And when we have better information, we will use better information. So I don't want people to get so tied up in the numbers either that they never speak or share an opinion or an idea or a fact that they knew to be true at the time, right? So I think it's really important that we encourage people to do the best that they have with what they have, to share what they know, to do it as honestly and as cleanly as possible, and that they provide the supporting context so the audience understands where they're coming from. I hope that makes sense. Again, going back to Jared's question of how do I know I've done enough research to start sharing an idea? My response would be, you can always share an idea. You just need to give the context to the audience that it's an idea and not a fact. And you can always share a fact as long as you can prove that it's true. And then if there's a question about some research, go back and look. And then dig deeper. And we can get into, there's some really great research tools, like Google Scholar. This is a much better way to dive into research than just Google. So sometimes we say we're researching when what we're doing is Googling. We're not really looking anything up in a book. And so Google Scholar is a great way to take your Googling to the next level. So you're actually looking at documented, verified research. Make sure the audience knows what you're talking about. Make sure that the audience knows whether or not you're sharing your opinion, whether you're sharing a fact, whether you're sharing an idea. That's what I've got for today. I would love to hear your thoughts on this subject. I would love to know what you think about the question, or how you would answer the question. How much research must you do before you can talk about an idea in a public setting? I would love to hear your thoughts on that. As always, if you have other public speaking questions, I would love to answer those for you. So please feel free to reach out to me, or contact me via social media or via email. I don't want you to hesitate at all to contact me. I'd love to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for listening. I am Alex Perry, the owner of Practically Speaking, where I coach and keynote on all things public speaking, storytelling, and communication. You can always find me on LinkedIn under Alex Perry, and on Instagram and Facebook at PS with Alex. As always, you will not find me on Twitter because Twitter scares me. Hope you found this helpful, and I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.